Alrighty, and welcome to the Cole's Custom Shop podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Cole, and I'm joined by Wade Black, my co host.
Hey everyone, my name's Wade.
So, here on the podcast, we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. As some of you who've seen the Cole's Custom Shop YouTube channel know that I build and collect model vehicles, mostly in 1/64 scale. And Wade also collects vehicles and has quite a collection himself. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the model world and a little bit about the real world when it comes to farming, trucking, cars, pickup trucks, all that good stuff.
You betcha. Yeah, so we both kind of come from an agricultural background. So there's lots of trucks and tractors and all that good stuff around. So we got a little experience with that, and we got some models kicking around. We got a little experience with that, so we should have lots to talk about. Kill some time.
Yeah, and this kind of came about a little bit of every time we get together, we end up talking for hours and hours, anyways. So we thought, hey, we both like podcasts. Why don't we just turn a mic and a camera on and keep talking as we normally do?
Yeah, kind of just captures some of it. So if we forget about the camera over there, that's why.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, why don't we start off with you, Wade? Tell a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your kind of role in both the collecting hobby and the full-sized life.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I'm a young fella here. I live out in east central Alberta. Grew up on a farm. We're mixed cattle and grain. Currently, we're at 2,500 acres of grain land and 300 acres of cattle. We also have a ranch there an hour west of Edmonton, so we do a lot of our own trucking in terms of grain hauling as well as cattle.
Right. And how many hours or kilometers between the home place and the ranch out west when you're hauling cattle?
It's about 3 hours 45 minutes right on the nose.
Right.
Depending on traffic and stuff, right?
So that's a pretty long round trip then, especially when you consider loading and unloading.
Yeah. So when we actually we take most of the cattle out there, usually it's 6 loads out and then 6 loads home. So it's a full-time gig for and usually the timing lands right in close to the seeding when we're going out. Like you finish seeding, you jump in the truck for a week straight, and then on the other end, it's usually right after harvest, just as the snow is starting to fall. Try and get them out before the snow. Don't always happen, but yeah. So that's kind of my experience. I've dabbled in a little bit of truck driving, and I'm definitely a bit of a truck nerd, and well, not a bit, complete truck nerd. I've done my research on axle weights and here in the States and all over the place, and it's kind of a thing. So it's something I find interesting. As far as the models, I really enjoy old stuff, mostly DCP models. I like the high quality finish and the little details and all that sort of good stuff in there. I'm also big on realism. I just love the little details, So I got a relatively small collection compared to Isaac's here, but I got my own little fleet going. Kind of got, I think, 7 or 8 kind of 70s trucks that I have some plans for, which I'm sure we'll discuss at some point or another in here. And then I got a collection of more modern trucks that are between myself and my dad that we've collected there. So all DCPs, well, except for a few other ones,
but yeah, all 1/64 scale die cast.
You betcha.
Trucks, trailers.
You betcha. I got one. I think it's like a 125, similar to the AMT kind of glued together models.
Right. Yeah, I think most of those are 1/25 scale.
Yeah. So I got one of those that I put together quite a few years ago, and I'd like to do another one. Those are kind of fun. Get to paint each piece and part and put it all together. But as far as models, and of course, growing up, I I played with all the John Deere and mostly John Deere. Let's be realistic. 164 toys.
Yeah.
Again, we'll discuss that later on preferences of brands, I'm sure too. So yeah, that kind of wraps up me and my stuff as far as models in the real world.
Yeah, definitely. And so growing up in East Central Alberta, up here in Canada, Wade and I grew up on farms just a few miles from each other. So we've been neighbors and friends and teammates, and I guess now we're cousins.
Yeah.
I ended up marrying one of Wade's cousins, and so yeah, we've definitely kind of grown up in similar situations of family farms and stuff, and so that's kind of where some of my passion for this hobby has started, and for real world of with the hobby, I kind of started off with getting interested in cars and trucks, and I thought I've always liked collecting, so I thought if I spend $2 on a Hot Wheels car and repaint it, cut it up, completely customize it, it's a whole lot better than spending 20 grand on a car, on a some Dodge Charger somewhere, or Mustang for something, or something like that. And from there, kind of went to farm toys, and I didn't have a lot of them as a kid, but I loved them. And actually, right here, I have the very first 1/64 scale die-cast tractor that I ever got. Nice. It's an old antique John Deere with a narrow front, and I still have that in my collection, which is pretty cool. Dug it out a couple of years ago, going through some old stuff, and so yeah, I really like collecting and customizing, as you'll see in other videos on the channel, and I kind of went from just cars to semi-trucks and farm equipment, and now I kind of do all three, and really like that. And then as far as the real world, I really like bringing that real world experience into the hobby, and especially things that are unique to Canadian farming in our area. If some of you are tuned in on YouTube, you might also notice here I have a Super Bee grain trailer set. That is something that you'll see other places, but up here it is common.
Oh yeah, that is like the baseline.
Yeah, like it's rare to see a single grain, especially with grain trailers.
Yeah.
It's rare to see a single grain trailer on the highway. Everything is Super Bees. And for those of you who may not know a Super Bee, actually, Wade, do you want to explain that a little better, because you know a little bit more of the history of it?
Yeah, no, for sure. I could give that a crack here. Super Bees. So it originally, kind of the first things that came around up here were the bee trains. So I believe it was back in the late 80s and early 90s. There was actually some testing done there, I think mainly in Eastern Canada, on wearing of roads and weight limits and all of that good stuff, axle weights, and you guys from the States will know that anything over 80,000 pounds, it gets kind of messy if you want to cross the state line. And I don't know the full extent of it, but there's even differences on, a state highway versus a federal highway and county road. Like it's wild. But anyway, so they did some testing way back then, and kind of they came up with axle spacings and stuff, because back in Ontario they used to have like spread axles, so like a tandem. I can't remember the numbers, but they'd be spread, 3-4 feet or whatever it is, and pretty unique look for sure. And it was all in the name of get more weight on less tires. So eventually around came a B train. So it was a tandem lead trailer and a tandem pup. And then I'm not sure exactly who, but one company came out with what they called the Super B. So it's a Tridem lead and a tandem pup. So on Tridems in Canada, if you're spacing from the middle of the front axle and the middle of the rear axle of an axle set is greater than 2.4 meters, you can haul 24,000 kgs on that axle set, and then 17,000 kgs on a tandem. So that's where the Super Bs really shine, is in weight. You really don't gain much volume compared to the weight, so that's why a lot of the heavier density commodities, oil, even like liquid propane, grain, lots of flat decks too here in Western Canada. All run Super Bs. You see them as well as in Eastern Canada. Get into Ontario and Quebec, and they kind of have some of their own unique weight restrictions. But yeah, that's kind of the general overview of the Super B in Western Canada.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's why it's so common with grain and oil and flatbeds, as well as a tricky thing. And I've seen them out there, but if you're just looking at a dry van trailer, basically a box trailer, for those of you who aren't super familiar with the trucking world, um, you have to unload from the back end. So you have to back up to a loading dock, forklift goes in, pulls stuff out. And with a Super B, it's two separate trailers. So it makes it a little trickier. And that's where you'll see A trains, which is where you have a lead trailer, either single axle or tandem. Behind that, you have a dolly, which is a separate piece that has a fifth wheel plate on the top so that you could load a trailer on top of that, but has a hitch that can hook to the back of a trailer rather than on top of a fifth wheel on a truck. And so then in that configuration, you can unload the rear trailer and unhook so that you can get right up to that front trailer, right up to the loading dock. And with a Super B train, you have two of the three axles in the way of that loading dock.
Yeah. Well, and actually, there are some companies that have used it, and actually some of them also do tandems that slide out and work as a like a B train.
Right.
We actually have one at home, just the front end that we use for hauling water. But actually, what they do is you'll switch your red glad hand on the front, and they have a separate one that you'll put in and then apply air, and that'll release pins on the axle set, kind of like a sliding axle on like a 40 or the 53-foot trailer. But then the whole back end, including that fifth wheel plate, will all slide underneath the trailer, so you can back right up to a dock, open the door, and unload that way.
Right. I have seen that with end dump trailers.
Yep.
It's yeah, because otherwise, they do it. You see that in Australia where they'll have a hole so that you can dump through that back frame, but if you're able to slide the load back flush, you can use an end dump much more clean.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the other trick I've seen in end dumps, I guess, is guys will actually use side dumps on the front.
Yeah.
And then have the fifth wheel plate on the back as well.
Yeah. So yeah, one with but with hopper trailers for grain, you're unloading underneath, so it doesn't really matter. You don't have to unhook. You're just going straight through, and it pulls nice. It trails really nice.
Yeah, like compared to an A train, those can get pretty wiggly wobbly going down the road, right? Especially like icy conditions, anything like that, they get pretty exciting in all the wrong ways.
Which you can imagine, Canada, that choice of an A train may not be super popular.
Yeah, pretty common. And the other thing with the A train too, the way that trucking was set up back in the before 1979.
Mm-hmm.
The whole nature of the business was set up differently in the logistics, so there's lots of um, essentially from distribution center to distribution center. So part of the benefit to the A train is instead of loading a 53-foot trailer half full with goods for one city and the other half of the trailer with, goods for the other city, you could have two trailers split in two, and instead of unloading and reloading, you just hook and unhook, kind of like an intermodal container does nowadays, right?
Yeah, and I think that's even why one of the most popular trucking company that I see up here in Canada still running A trains and consistently running them is FedEx.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's smaller loads that are broken down more, and they can basically go from city to city and just drop a trailer, pick up the other one, and then keep going, and then leave the distribution center to sort through the packages that way. And weight's also not an issue.
Absolutely.
When you're just delivering household goods like that.
Yeah, because I think a single axle is 9,100 kgs.
Yeah,
up here in Canada.
Because that's the other thing, they're running single axle A trains.
Yeah. So weight really isn't an issue. It's more volume, and I think you see there's more companies that do in the States with more population centers and cities that are closer to each other than the Great White North up here.
And I think that's also why the B train is so essential up here, because you're hauling so much farther from center to center. If you compare population in Canada to the States for population density, we are very spread out, very rural. To us right now, we're several hours from a large enough city with an airport, but even those cities are, I don't know, 12, 14 hours from the next ones, and aren't even that big of cities realistically.
Yeah.
The only cities in Canada that are anywhere close to major normal capital state cities in the States are Toronto and Vancouver.
Which, if you ask any artist who's ever traveled, done a Canada tour, that usually about encompasses it. Maybe they'll think about Edmonton or Regina or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Vancouver and Toronto are kind of the big cities.
And they're at opposite ends of the country, which is the second largest country in the whole world.
And like, if you leave here and drive to Toronto, it'll take you a week. And a couple days from here, going the opposite direction to Vancouver. So that gives you a rough idea how far apart they are. Like,
and that's running at, 100 kilometers an hour, which is about 60 miles per hour.
62, yeah.
So, you're running at a decent speed, but it's going to take you that long. And so, yeah, with things that spread out, you really do need to haul things. I kind of think of it as like the winter equivalent of Australia.
Yep.
When it comes to trucking logistics, of course, everything's that much more extreme over there.
Oh, absolutely.
But Canada's the most similar to there in the distance and the low density population, and most of the population lives within a couple hours of the American border too.
Yes.
So everything north of that is much more spread out.
Especially as you go further east, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because like Ontario is actually a really large province. You look at a map and go, oh yeah, that's pretty big. But like to drive across it takes quite a while. But again, most of its population is in Toronto and the surrounding area, kind of that southern Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really actually a bulk of Canada's population is really in that little cranny down there.
Yeah.
So you think about coming, west out here, and then you go east to the Maritimes, and yeah, it's pretty incredible. So like,
yeah,
a Super B fully loaded, like a gross weight is 63,500 kgs, and I think that's about 138,000 pounds, if I remember right. So, we always like to brag and compare ourselves to our American friends who only do 80,000 max, of course, depending on where you're at. But like you can load that up and more or less go straight across the country. So it's pretty handy that way, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you're thinking of the commodities that are big export commodities that need to get to the coast for sale across the world, you're looking at oil and grain.
Absolutely.
And so you're looking at Super B tanker trailers, which are very, very popular, and Super B hopper bottom grain trailers, which are also popular. And yes, we move stuff by train, both oil and grain, but you also have to get it from the farm to those elevators, and that can be very spread out. Even if you're looking at the average farm in the States, how far they have to haul is nothing compared to the average farm up here. And someone might say, oh, you have a grain elevator 30 minutes away or an hour away. Yeah, but in order to get any competition, if you want to have the option to sell to any one of 4 grain elevators, you're traveling a long ways.
Yeah, like I know for us, most of our grain is hauled an hour and a half away. Either up to Camrose or
and that's one way.
And yeah, that's one way. That's not round trip. Fortunately, we do actually have a short line railroad that has a grain elevator here, right close to us, which is actually really cool. It's kind of a cooperatively owned thing. Yeah, other than that, you got to go a long ways, even just to get to like an elevator on a major rail line. Really, is what you're trying to get to. So it's really important to be able to haul a good amount of weight and make it worth your time for sure.
Yeah.
And then even you look at railroads that are in Canada here, like of course being in Western Canada, most of our export, like Isaac said, grain, oil, and actually quite a bit of coal and stuff as well. A lot of that moves by train, but you have to wiggle that through, the tracks that go through the Rocky Mountains, which it's pretty easy for them to have issues and slowdowns and stuff, right? That's actually been a big thing in agriculture in the last few years here in Western Canada, because I'm not sure the exact number, but we export a large percentage of our grain to markets all over the world, right? And especially with the Ukraine crisis now, it's very important that stuff gets out and gets where it needs to be, right?
Yeah, as well as like the grain that we grow here, it's hard red spring wheat. It is the and this isn't just us, bragging up Canadian grain. It is the best wheat for making bread in the world, and we grow it up here in Canada, and they can grow it in some of the states, especially the northern ones like Montana.
Yeah.
But that grain, in order to get good quality bread that rises properly and fills out well, you either need to use that wheat to make that flour or mix that wheat with the rest of the wheat from the world, which is what most of the grain in most of the bread, in the grocery store is Canadian wheat mixed with wheat from Russia and France and Australia and all over.
Yeah, just to get the right qualities that
exactly.
they're looking for, right? Because you need a mix, right? And affordability reasons as well.
And so yeah, it's that important. And that was one of the, being proud of Canadian wheat and Canadian innovation of, inviting the rest of the world to help them make a decision to create a good trucking system with Super Bs and things is something that kind of inspired me to make these Super B grain trailer models, especially when you can't buy them.
Yep.
Because all the toys, we talked about DCP, We've talked about those John Deere farm toys. Those are all made by Ertl. All of those companies, even the smaller ones, are based in the States.
Right.
And yes, everything's made in China, but everything's designed for the States. And down there, there's not many states that run Super Bees because they're restricted on weight, and weight laws differ between state to state so much more than they do up here in Canada that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense down there as much as it does up here.
I think the most common use for Super Bees in the States is either American companies who are coming to Canada or Canadian companies going to the States.
Exactly.
Like, that's it, really, in my experience anyway.
Mm-hmm. And especially when you look at grain and flatbeds and oil, which is the three biggest ones they're used for. Like, that's a lot going back and forth across that border.
Oh, absolutely. Like,
And,
the
yeah.
U.S. is our largest trading partner
Mm-hmm.
by a long ways. And, of course, we have a massive border with them, right? So, but, there's a lot of product that goes down there.
So I remember when I was first trying to build these models, it took a lot. I've done 4 prototypes of building from scratch, building from pieces of wood and plastic. 4 prototypes to get to where I wanted, and then another 3 or 4 failed 3D printed prototypes to get that to where I wanted it. And all those built off of the scratch built one. So it's taken me a long time to get to a really nice design. But when I was coming up with this design, Wade and I were talking and trying to figure out lengths and axle spacing a little bit, even where the pin to hook onto that fifth wheel plate is, because you're cramming a lot in there with those hoppers to try and make it work, and then overall length, and so I think I've come up with a design that I'm proud of, but what makes me much more proud of it is that it is a Canadian thing. It is a local thing. I grew up, when we'd be on the highway, I'd see Super Bee grain trailers, coming back and forth and stuff like that. And they were always so cool, and it's something very unique. And so that definitely makes me that much more proud of it with that, really.
And again, like you said, it's not something you can just buy off the shelf.
No.
And, I mean, it'd be pretty expensive tooling for a company like DCP to make for such a niche market,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there'd be lots of people who would buy them, but it's such a niche market, but it looks cool,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly. And that's where I'm really wanting to take this of, Canadian collectors being able to get something that they actually run. It's in order to get that. But then also someday I would hope it to be spread wider, kind of like everyone's fascination with the Australian road trains.
Right.
They're so cool, they're so different. And some of those sets, it's so hard. There is a company that builds a few over there in 1/64 scale, but shipping from Australia to North America and back and forth is so expensive.
And those models are very expensive as they are.
And very rare.
Yes.
I saw one at the Red Deer Toy Show. Collector friend of mine that I knew and I bought stuff from in the past, that he had one there. I was commenting on it, and he said he had someone message him from California that just saw it in the background of his photo saying that he's at the toy show, that was offering him ridiculous money for it.
Oh my gosh.
So that's my plan, basically. Get these Canadian trailers buttoned up, really good design, keep making them 3D printing and scratch building, and then start building Australian stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a niche market, definitely an interesting thing. Um, and one of the things that really got me into that trucking side of things, because I grew up on the farm, I love running the combine, and I have a lot of knowledge about that world. And when the trucking world that I used to have very, very little knowledge, we got all our grain trucked out, um, and we didn't really have any trucks of our own. We still just run, tandem straight trucks on the farm, and then get our grain hired out to haul. And most of that is with your uncle,
Right? Yeah.
Who's been a great trucker for us over the years, ever since I was little. And but I didn't know a lot about trucking. And so, in building these models, what got me to learn so much about trucking and model trucks and be able to apply that to my model building is integrating that agriculture side of things. So, grain trailers is the perfect place for me to start with that.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, just, you know, that's kind of where my collection has kind of come in. And I I'm pretty sure I have more, especially including all my prototypes. I'm pretty sure I have more Super B grain trailer sets than 99.5% of serious collectors in the world. There's probably less than a handful that have more.
And the rest of them probably are doing the same thing and making their own.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. There's very few that are, because they go for a lot of money because they're something that someone had to build that couldn't be mass produced.
Right.
Um, but they go for a lot of money. So guys who are doing it are building their own or building them and selling them. Just like what my plan is. And well, I sold a Super B grain trailer set last week to a guy. Nice. He saw a picture of this very set paired up with a Kenworth T700 that I made.
Gotcha.
And was asking about it, and of course it was scratch built with a truck, so it was way out of his budget. But I said, he said, I'll be honest with you, like I was gonna stop the bidding on the auction thing at this. And so I said, thanks for your honesty. I've got a few options for you actually. If you're more interested in the trailers than the truck, that takes a significant amount of the price off.
Right.
And then I said, here is the scratch built, fully finished set. Here is a 3D printed set that is assembled but not painted. Here is a 3D printed kit that is all the pieces that you can paint yourself and then assemble. Here's the different prices. Which one do you want? And so he chose one of the kits that was actually assembled already. So he chose the middle one. And that worked out great because for me it was like, I got a sale out of it and it was fine and it had something in his budget. And for him it was, he didn't need to have the most pristine, best, fully finished set. He just needed to have a Super B set because he couldn't get one.
Right.
And I think that's kind of also where I'm trying to get in with the buying and selling side of things. Of the other guys that make Super B sets have to sell them for a lot more because they're that much more detailed and they put in that much more time.
Gotcha.
And so because I have some at that level and then some lower than that, and then kits that you can build yourself, my prices can be more competitive to guys who don't have a whole lot of money for it. Like as you said, the DCP trucks are incredibly high detailed.
Yes, absolutely.
but that comes with a big price.
Yes. Yeah, you pay for what you get for, that's for sure.
Exactly. And yeah, it is fun though, bridging the gap between the hobby and the full-sized world, because the hobby is where you get to dream.
Yeah, and experiment for sure.
Experiment and dream, and every time somebody who is a trucker or a farmer or interested in cars or whatever sees a model that is detailed out with some of the details from the real thing, they just get excited and they think it's the coolest thing they've ever seen.
Well, I think that's what really makes modeling enjoyable, is that link, whether it's old equipment that reminds guys of, when they were growing up, or if it's the new stuff that they could never afford, like an X9 Combine that's like $1.5 million or whatever it is, right? So it's
yeah,
I think that's what really makes collecting models so enjoyable. Like I think that's really what makes it, right? Is that connection to the real life stuff.
And even with me, of like, I don't think I could ever be a full-time trucker. I'm not a big fan of driving for hours and hours and hours. I have lower back troubles, and that would be tough. And it's a lot of money and time to get into. So when you're into it, you really gotta put in the years in order to make it pay off.
Yeah.
As well as, I'm pretty sure I go to the bathroom way too often to be a trucker.
You need a big pee bottle.
Yeah, that's for sure. And some of the horror stories I've heard are interesting, to say the least. There's a few other podcasts that talk about that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I really enjoy the culture of it, and enjoy connecting with them. And building trucks is kind of my way of being connected to the trucking world without being a trucker.
Yeah.
Same with the farm toys. My brothers are the ones who are farming, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to, I didn't want to run the farm, but I wanted to be connected. Yeah. I wanted to stay in touch with that culture, and me building farm toys and looking for other jobs that are connected to the industry helped me stay connected with that and stay connected with farmers and farm culture. Same with the cars. I don't have the space or the money or the time to buy up a whole bunch of old muscle cars and old 50s trucks and square body Chevys and stuff like that, but I like staying connected with the culture, and I think those things are really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's my way of staying connected. And like you said, it's what makes the hobby so much more than just a random collection of something.
Like, I don't know what kind of connection a guy would have to stamps or anything. And there could be, right? An older fella, maybe that's what he grew up with. I don't know. But it kind of does the same thing for us. And I think, especially growing up on the farm, for those of you who aren't from a farming background, it'd be similar to a family business for sure. But it just intertwines with your personal life so much, and it's such a big part of who you are, especially growing up as a kid on the farm. So having that connection is super, super important for us farm kids, for sure.
Exactly. And that's even why one of the reasons why we started the podcast was to share some of that magic.
Oh, exactly.
With our listeners, and also to have fun diving into what makes this special and getting to experience more and more of that, and kind of building a community around that. One of the best parts of doing a podcast is that we can have a discussion.
Exactly right.
And, with that, it's so much more than just one person spitting off information. And especially when our biggest connection to the hobby is trying to have the culture and the good parts of the full-sized real life stuff being that culture and good parts of the hobby. Without the 20-hour days and the changing a tire on the side of the road side of things, that can really kind of, I don't know, be the goal of it, and we kind of want to share that with you guys and keep experiencing it ourselves as we talk about it.
Yeah, and I mean, talking for hours on end is kind of fun, so we might as well share it with you guys, and maybe you guys will learn something, and when we hear from you guys, maybe we'll learn something. So just a good experience for everyone to connect and learn some stuff and have a good time, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And definitely, if you guys have made it this far, leave a comment down below, and give us some feedback. Tell us your favorite part of the podcast, and tell us what you'd like to see in the future. And if you have any questions, anything from something simple to what was your first car, to something more complicated of why is this very important in farming or trucking or in building cars or something like that. Any questions at all, just leave them down in the comments.
Yeah.
And we would love to stick with this thing and continue it, and have some more guests on here.
Yeah.
And just keep talking about things.
For sure. And if there, like Isaac said, any questions, let us know. Anything we get wrong, let us know that too. We're still learning at this whole podcasting thing, and we'll try and get the information as accurate as possible.
Exactly. And something you might learn as we go is that both Wade and I love knowledge and love learning things. So if we get something wrong, as much as it's hard to humble yourself, we like learning. Yeah. So
and we won't be accurate.
Giving us the right answer is actually very helpful. So thank you for sticking around, and leave us a comment if you stayed around this long, and we'll see you next time on the Cole's Custom Shop podcast.
Take it easy, guys.